You look calm, but your mind never shuts up. Everywhere is quiet, except in your head. You're not panicking, you're just over-processing yourself to death. The calculations, the replays, the silent arguments, thoughts spinning, memory fragments flashing. What you said, what they meant, what you should have done, all looping at once. You try to listen, but your brain keeps scanning for danger, even when the room is silent, even when nothing is wrong. It's not panic. It's not a breakdown. It's just everything. All the time, you look composed, but your mind is trying to solve a threat that doesn't exist. You smile, but your jaw is clenched. You speak, but your body's already bracing for something to go wrong. You're not falling apart. You're just thinking yourself out of existence, one overanalyzed moment at a time. This is the war no one sees, because it's silent, and it's happening in your own head. You function, you reply, you meet deadlines, you keep the peace. No one questions you, because you don't look overwhelmed. You look fine, but no one sees how hard you're working just to stay one thought ahead of collapse. No one sees the split-second recalibrations. Was that too much? Did I sound cold? Are they pulling away? You smile mid-sentence, while your mind replays the last thing you said 6 different ways. You're not listening. You're managing. The performance is flawless, but the cost is chronic. Your brain is a battlefield, but all they see is your calendar. And that's the trap. The better you appear, the less anyone suspects you're suffering. You've become so good at managing your mind, you don't remember what it feels like to rest inside it. You're not okay. But no one asks, because you've trained the world to see the mask as you. This is how the war survives, by staying invisible, even to you. Overthinking isn't a personality trait. It's a coping mechanism, disguised as intelligence. You weren't born with your mind in overdrive. You were trained into it by your environment, not through lessons, through nervous system conditioning. At some point, you learned. Feeling isn't safe. It doesn't lead to care. It leads to punishment, neglect, or unpredictability. So you did what was necessary. You retreated upward, from sensation into cognition, from instinct into strategy, from body into brain. This is called cognitive over-identification, a trauma response, where the mind becomes hyperactive because the body was never allowed to relax. In psychology, it's sometimes called hypermentalization, where you analyze every interaction, facial cue, and silence not because you're curious, but because your system is trying to prevent abandonment or conflict before it happens. Carl Jung warned about this. He said when a child's emotional world is invalidated or ignored, the ego compensates by inflating the intellect. The person becomes clever, but spiritually and emotionally disembodied. They can explain everything, but feel nothing. And because the world rewards clarity over vulnerability, you were praised for this. They called you smart, mature, sharp. But they missed the truth. You weren't analyzing because you were free. You were analyzing because it was the only form of control your environment allowed you to keep. And what began as a strategy to feel safe became a habit that now feels like your identity. This is why you can't just stop overthinking, because the thoughts aren't thoughts, they're defenses. Each mental loop is a surveillance camera, each interpretation a form of threat detection, each obsession a way to predict pain before it arrives. You don't have a thinking problem, You have a safety problem that your mind is still trying to solve. And until you address the wound that taught you, thinking keeps me safe and feeling gets me hurt, your thoughts will never slow down, because they were never meant to entertain you. They were meant to protect you. There comes a point when the very thing that kept you safe starts keeping you stuck. That's when the collapse begins. Quietly, internally, rationally even. You don't explode. You erode. You begin forgetting simple things, not because you're disorganized, but because your cognitive load is maxed out. Your brain isn't lazy, it's overloaded. It's been simulating disaster on loop, and now it can't retain the grocery list. You can't make decisions, not because you're indecisive, but because your system has been trained to treat every option as a potential threat. This is called executive dysfunction, a state where your thinking can no longer lead to action because your nervous system is stuck in a feedback loop. It's not burnout, it's mental freeze, a survival response where clarity collapses under the weight of constant internal surveillance. You don't trust your instincts, so you second-guess every move. You call it self-awareness, but it's not. It's anxiety wearing a mask of insight. And here's the truth no one tells you. Overanalyzing your life doesn't make you wise. It makes you exhausted. You're not introspecting. You're managing. Trying to feel safe by staying ahead of everything you were never meant to control. This is cognitive hypervigilance. A freeze-adapted brain that doesn't know how to let go, because letting go once meant getting hurt. And now, you sleep but never feel rested. You eat but feel numb after. You speak but don't feel heard. Because you're not speaking from self, you're speaking from defense. And then the scariest part, the thoughts don't even sound like yours anymore. They're just fragments, not conclusions, not insight, just static. You're not falling apart. You're shutting down one over-processed circuit at a time. No tears, no screams, just stillness, but not the kind that heals. The kind that comes when the system is running on fumes and silence starts to feel like surrender. This war you're fighting? It's not random. It's patterned, predictable, intelligent, because it began with one core belief, implanted, not chosen. If I stay mentally ahead, I won't get hurt. You weren't taught how to feel. You were taught how to scan, how to track the temperature of a room before you ever knew your own. This is what happens in emotionally unpredictable environments. Your system stops trusting safety and starts tracking signals. You didn't become analytical because you were curious. You became analytical because it was the only way to navigate moods, avoid rejection, and stay needed. Your mind became the buffer between your vulnerable self and the world that didn't know how to hold it. So thinking became your peacekeeper, your protection, your proof of worth. And it worked. Until it didn't. Because the same vigilance that kept you safe is now keeping you trapped. You can't be present because presence requires trust, and trust requires surrender. But your system still believes surrender is unsafe. So it keeps thinking, managing, preparing, even in silence, especially in silence. That flood of thoughts, that loop of checking and scanning, it's not weakness, it's residual strategy, a nervous system that was never taught how to be still without being scared. Carl Jung said, "We don't become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." This is that moment, the realization that your mind was never broken. It was brilliant, It adapted perfectly to an emotional environment that required constant vigilance. But now that environment is gone, and the mechanism remains. You don't need to get better at thinking. You need to remember that you were never supposed to live inside your thoughts. Your intelligence wasn't the problem. Your disconnection was. You've been trying to feel safe through control. But true safety doesn't come from managing every outcome. It comes from coming home to yourself without needing a plan. So what now? You've traced the war. You've seen its origin, its brilliance, its cost. But here's the truth no one teaches you. You don't win this war by thinking your way out of it. Because thought was never the enemy. The enemy was disconnection. Disconnection from your body. From presence. From safety that isn't earned through performance. And healing doesn't feel like clarity at first. It feels like confusion. Because clarity was your defense. It feels like stillness. But that stillness will terrify you. Because when your nervous system has lived its whole life treating silence as a prelude to danger, peace won't feel peaceful. It will feel wrong, like you're missing something, like you're about to be blindsided. This is called nervous system recalibration. And it's not a mindset shift. It's a lived process. It's noticing the moment you reach for another thought instead of sitting with the space between them. It's allowing discomfort to rise without reflexively scanning for what's wrong. It's feeling emotion in the body without trying to name it, fix it, or explain it. You don't need better thoughts. You need a deeper anchor. You don't need another strategy. You need capacity. Capacity to pause, to sit, to stay with yourself long enough to prove to your system. Nothing is wrong right now. That is reprogramming, not a mantra, not a mindset. 1,000 micro moments where you respond differently than you used to. It won't be dramatic, it won't be clean, but it will be real. You won't feel better right away. You'll feel disoriented, like the war has gone quiet, but the habits of battle remain. And in that moment, you'll have a choice, not to fight the mind, not to escape the body, but to stay. Stay with the silence, stay with the sensation, stay with the strange, unfamiliar feeling of not needing to know what happens next. Because that stillness, that quiet flicker of peace that doesn't demand performance, that's the place your thoughts have been trying to lead you to this entire time. If you've made it this far, you already know. The war was never about weakness. It was about vigilance. It was about staying ahead in a world that never taught you how to just be. You became functional, reliable, composed, but beneath the performance, you were managing a system that never knew what rest felt like. That's not failure. That's survival. But survival is not the same as peace. And control is not the same as safety. You've spent years performing clarity because you were never allowed to be uncertain. You were rewarded for composure, but punished for confusion. So you made thinking your home and turned instinct into a threat. But maybe now, you're ready to step outside of that role. Not to collapse, not to fix, just to return. Not to silence the thoughts, but to stop obeying them. Not to prove you're okay, but to finally stop pretending you have to be. So let me ask you, are you ready to stop performing peace just to keep others comfortable? If this message reached something inside you, write in the comments, "I'm done performing peace." Even if it's just those words. Even if it's the first honest thing you've said in years. And don't stop here. The next chapter is already waiting. It's not just another video. It's the continuation of this return to stillness, to presence, to you. I'll see you there.